When my family and I moved out to Seattle so that my husband and I could start our jobs as pediatricians at Seattle Children's Hospital, I never expected that our first experience in the hospital would be as parents of a patient in the emergency room. When we checked in, they didn't treat us like an easy face laceration. They really treated her like a child who had something scary happen to her.
I remember being in the exam room scared, sad, knowing that there was something wrong. My heart was kind of beating a little fast. I was scared and nervous, as probably most parents are when their children are sick. Even when you're a doctor, you kind of lose your doctor role and your doctor thinking cap when it's your child.
My daughter Susanna was diagnosed with mucopolysaccharidosis type 1, or Hurler syndrome, at the age of 8 months. She's an extremely happy, vivacious child, and especially when she had Cheetos in her hand. She had some long-term complications of the transplant, which we had to deal with over the ensuing 8 years. We brought her in for a biopsy, and she never left the hospital after that. So she died in the hospital 10 months later.
I remember walking down and seeing my husband in the pantry singing, and started crying because I knew that our lives were changed forever. It was really, really hard to be the patient. I think every physician knows that. But it was particularly hard because my kid was sick and I didn't want her to be sick and I was scared.
Our son Carlos has cerebral palsy, and he has been getting multiple different services here. He's had multiple different surgeries and multiple procedures here.
It's been a really interesting journey as a physician to have experienced life on the other side of the bed. Having a child with special needs is a chronic grieving process. I mean, when you have a baby, you've imagined everything in that child's life. You know, you've thought about them going to kindergarten, you've thought about throwing a baseball together, you've thought about walking your daughter down the aisle. And every time one of those things doesn't happen the way you imagined is like a little bit of a death.
As a parent with a child with these problems, it's very scary. You never know what the next step is. You don't know how closely people are following things. You don't know if they're checking up on stuff. It's a very scary place to be. And to have somebody, look you in the eye, sit down, and say, "It's going to be okay. We're here with you," is a big deal. It really does more than by most medicines that can be given.
The whole experience of interacting with someone is taken in by the families, and they will recognize every gesture and every nonverbal cue that you can give.
So it's really critical as a provider to recognize the power of the words that you choose and the way that you say them. And do you sit down and do you look them in the eyes? Is your hand on the doorknob when you're asking your question? Every tiny thing that we do is not tiny to a family who's in a hard situation.
Often in the emergency department, a resident will come to me and say, "The mom thinks there's a limp, but there's no limp." And I tell them to go back and look. If the mom thought there was a limp, there's something. And even if there isn't a limp, there's a story behind it. And that story is the key to being an effective clinician for that particular family.
So even something that as a physician I would have thought was very minor, as a parent was a very big deal to me and to my daughter. And that experience helped me to think of all of the patients that come in, no matter how serious their complaint, to remember that it's a really big deal to them.
When families are upset, remember that it's not about you. The interaction almost always is about them and their concerns, their fears, their history.
Listening to families and what they have to say is a good thing, and that it can change outcomes. If not medically, but at least from the family's perspective, which and perception. That's their reality.
These aren't questions that take a lot of time. They're things that just take a moment, and they change the whole feeling of the interaction for the family.
So much of health is what happens at home. It's not, the minute in the doctor's office is just a minute. We need to listen to them, be empathetic, and find a way to partner with them to execute what needs to happen.
As a parent, that's one of the first things I think about is this person right for my child? Are they going to give me the right advice and the right recommendations to follow? And if so, do I trust them enough to actually follow them? And I never thought I would be thinking that as a parent who's a physician, but I do.
It's just how much are you willing to just reach out and be human and be there with a person and really be willing to look them in the eye and share the experience and know that it's hard.
One of the docs, he said, look, you need continuity, and I want to be that person. And that person was able to, listen to us and talk us through it and give us the assurance that, hey, there's not much more we can do, or really there's no more we can do. And he had established that trust and that relationship. And so when we were ready to withdraw support, we could do it, knowing that we had done everything we could do.
I've learned that I don't know what someone else's journey is, and how I can help them is a simple question. I just need to ask, how can I help?
For the families and caregivers, if you think, gosh, that mom is doing an amazing job getting all those medications in on that difficult schedule, say that. She's probably never heard it before, and she does it every day, giving 14 medicines to that child on a schedule that gets her out of bed every single night.
I find that the majority of incidents where I go out of my way to help someone rather than saying no, when that's certainly the easier thing to do, is that I feel better about it personally, just because I feel like I did the right thing. But also I think the families, they feel better. And again, it gets back to that trust.
It's a real privilege to be a physician and be able to do that with people, to be on a pathway with them and have a small window into their lives and maybe, have the opportunity to make it better. And that gives back to me, and that is, I think, where the energy and the nourishment for ourselves as physicians come from.
This is about collectively being better, not being better because we're bad, but being better because we're good and we want to be even just excellent. And because that's, as a parent with a child with a chronic illness, that's what I want. I want excellent.
We can change it so that families feel that the doctors that they know are going to listen to them and are going to understand their perspective and are going to help their child, not just because of what they can do technically or how smart they are, but because they care. And that's a really powerful message and a powerful change.